Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin today, joined by somebody who survived the jinx. I was kind of pushing it. I just wanted to see how far we could go. Didn't specifically name you in yesterday's show, but like 99% of people who were paying attention knew who I was talking about, and you survived the jinx. Sabrina Merchant of The Athletic. That's still getting some taking some getting used to. Thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations on surviving the jinx. Maybe you ended the streak.
I have stronger constitution than Pete. That's what it is.
I maybe that'll just be the name of the show. Sabrina is greater than Pete. Yeah, no, the plan was to do our show yesterday, and then we had some Miles related scheduling issues, so we pushed it back to today, which allowed Harrison and me to make fools of ourselves talking about the LeBron Kyrie saga, which I literally told you I did not want to waste the show on with you for. But do you have any grand macro LeBron Kyrie thoughts like before we dive into the show?
I think I've made my Kyrie thoughts very clear in previous iterations of such Laker podcasts. I would prefer him not to be a Laker, and if that means that he takes LeBron to Dallas, honestly, still think that's preferable to him being a Laker. So that's where I land.
I can't believe I think I mostly agree with you. Like that's basically what I was saying on the show yesterday. It was just like, if having a happy LeBron means employing Kyrie and doing everything necessary to employ Kyrie, because he's not taking a pay cut.
No, he's not.
I would rather not employ LeBron. I can't believe that's
it's a weird thing to say, honestly, but give me a couple firsts, give me Jaden Hardy and, Josh Green or whatever.
Josh Green and Austin Reaves just fighting every day in practice. Like,
right. That was a thing. I love random NBA feuds, the ones that you never remember until it actually happens. I feel like we'll look back at Bruce Brown and D'Lo like that someday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at some point people might remember D'Lo, but
At some point.
I say that as if I haven't been able to I haven't gone a day without thinking about what his contract is going to be.
Are those really the Lakers point guard options, D'Lo or Kyrie Irving? Like that's it? That's what we're landing on?
Yeah. Great situation that
another great offseason ahead for the purple and gold.
So today, the purpose of the show is to get you from A to B in your commute. But what we're going to be talking about on the show is going to be the season that was and the direction that we kind of think that the Lakers could maybe go in moving forward. And then I also want to talk some WNBA. You are the Athletics women's basketball aficionado. You are one of a team there, and we are the best appearance that I have ever gotten from you was when you ranted and raved like I do about the Sparks and the shoddy. And the shoddy
I was planning on taking that day off, and you were like, yeah, I think Derek Fisher just got fired. Shouldn't we talk?
So that is what we're going to talk about there. We're going to, I said when we were getting ready for the show, preview the season, but the season is already underway. So we are going to get people caught up on the season that has been already, and then kind of get everybody looking forward for those who are interested in the W, which is a very much so growing entity, and women's basketball in general is, I would go so far as to say, probably the fastest growing sport in the country. I would probably say. So that is what we're going to do later in the second half of the show. But yeah, let's start with, I will let you, I don't know how warm you are, if you've stretched up or whatever.
Okay.
If you want to take a victory lap, because the Lakers now cannot win an NBA
so
championship.
Disappointed that I relented ever so slightly after the conference semifinals.
They didn't win another game after.
They didn't win another game. I don't optimism just doesn't work for me. Pure pessimism is really the main path forward. I kept thinking about that the minute I came on the show, after game 6, and I was like, well, they're in the conference finals. Nobody else looks good. I was like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have just stuck to my guns. I got overexcited, and Yeah, here we are.
I
I
guess
said at the
that
start of the
was
playoffs that there was no chance that the Lakers would win a title, and zero chance that the Lakers win a title.
is that so that was after game 6, right? Like that was after game
That
6 that
was
we
when I relented. Yes.
yeah.
Should have known something was amok when I finally turned positive.
It's usually how it goes with me, right? Where I'll say like I've had shows titled
Mhm.
Anthony can't find anything to complain about.
Right.
And then the
And then it's
world will
just like
provide me
LeBron breaks his
something
foot.
provide me something to complain about. But I guess that's a pretty good place to start. Then, what did you think of the Nuggets series? Right, like uh, the Nuggets obviously sweep the Lakers,
Mhm.
and that would imply that the Nuggets were significantly better. Right, you win 4 straight
One would
in
think.
a series. That's usually the indication there. But they won those 4 straight by a combined 24 points. Game 2 felt like the one that the Lakers, I would go so far as to say, should have won that one. They were in
Felt the
position
same
to
way
win
about
it.
game 4, honestly.
Yeah, game 4, game 1 they make that crazy comeback or whatever, which was a fake comeback. It was a classic fake comeback, but
We love a
still,
Laker fake comeback.
yeah. But like in 3 of the 4 games that we watched there, the Lakers had opportunities to at least either make it more competitive or win the game outright. So what's your kind of like grand takeaway from that? Like, do you think the Lakers are the second best team of those 4 that in the conference finals? Is that enough for you to want to run it back? Like, where do you stand after watching that series? And I guess what we've seen from the finals so far.
Yeah, so I think I had spoken with you before the start of the playoffs, or if I haven't, maybe we spoke offline, but I had said that I kind of liked the Denver matchup for the Lakers because I didn't think Denver was particularly good at walling off the paint. And,
Hmm.
I thought that the Lakers could get a lot of business done, like right by the basket. And that ended up not being the case. Maybe
Yeah,
Denver would have been a better matchup for the Lakers in the first round than they were in the third. I think they had figured some things out by the time they got to the conference finals. And I think the Lakers were particularly worn down after the semifinals, after that 6-game set against the Warriors, which, I think they won the only way they could have won that series, but it required a lot out of Anthony Davis and LeBron James to
yeah.
take down the Warriors. And I think we saw a diminished version of Anthony Davis in the conference finals where he was not the best player on the court like he was in the first 2 rounds, and
No,
not even close. So that's
and
what
certainly not at his position. Like
right. And that's what the Lakers needed to win the series, and they didn't have that. And there's no shame in admitting that Denver was the better team. I think they were the better coached team. They had the best player on the court. They had the better depth, honestly. And to be in the Final Four after the way the Lakers started the season, the way February started for the Lakers, the way the play-in started for the Lakers, I think is a pretty great outcome to the season.
yeah,
Would I have liked to win a game? Sure, but losing in 4, losing in 5, I don't particularly care one way or the other. Like, a loss is a
yeah.
loss. And I kind of love that the Lakers have this franchise record of never winning a game down 3-0. Just pack it in at all costs.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Nick Van
Yeah,
Exel's just sitting there like, I started it.
I
That
did
was
it. I
me.
did
One,
it.
two, three, Cancun. One, two, three, Cancun. All me. You're all welcome.
Yeah. So yeah, I think ending up in the conference finals, putting up a fight against the Nuggets, who maybe they win the title, maybe they don't. I still think they're an excellent team, and to put that kind of showing against the Nuggets, like you said, we lost all 4 games, but by a margin of 24 points, I think is very respectable. This is a team that I believe, after LeBron has foot surgery, like, should be able to compete again in its current iteration. And obviously, it's unlikely to keep the team together in its current iteration because of what is going to be required to retain D'Angelo Russell,
Mhm.
Austin,
Schroeder.
Rui. If Lonnie Walker wants to come back on what presumably would be a pay cut, like you just mentioned, Schroeder. So there's a lot of pieces that have to be assembled, to put this team back together. But I think the core should should be able to retain in place. The Lakers shouldn't have too much difficulty keeping the main pieces together.
Yeah.
The Lonnie Walker game 4 is like an aberration that you don't know if it's going to happen again. Like, are you going to get off the scrap heap to make that happen? But I really like the direction the Lakers took over the last 3 months. I think the idea of this team makes a lot of sense. Would I have liked to have one more shooter like Malik Beasley? Were you alive? I don't know. It's just a weird
He's
situation.
still standing there with his hand up. Like he has
Yeah,
his follow through
follow through
somewhere.
is so good,
Yeah.
so good.
He may have airballed it, but he's still standing there with his with his follow through.
No, I think it's weird to say that. Like, I think a team that is built on a 38-year-old superstar who is entering off-season surgery, and another 30-plus-year-old center who is also potentially having off-season surgery is poised for better things in the future. But I really do believe that way. And like that's how I felt at the end of the regular season was I don't know that the Lakers can win this year, but I feel very good about their future going forward. And I still
Yeah.
do. And the playoff run really only validated that. Like, less, of course, I had zero faith in them winning a title, but that doesn't mean that I have zero faith in like what this team can accomplish going forward. I mean, Austin playing for Team USA, historically, young players who play for Team USA have just incredible
Yeah. Leaps.
momentum heading into the regular season. Like I think
Yeah.
about Lamar Odom, he wasn't that young, but like when he played for the World Cup team in 2010, that leads into his sixth man of the year season. You think about like Kyrie Irving, for lack of a better example, and like just Steph, and I'm thinking of all superstars. I wish I could think of a non-superstar to make this analogy better for
Keldon
Austin.
Johnson, right?
But,
like, remember he was kind of like a weird addition to it, and then like
yeah,
he
the
became
Olympic
like
team,
really
right.
good that next
Yeah.
year. He looked really good. Yeah.
So I'm really excited about that jump for Reaves. I think Rui is very comfortable here, and the fit next to LeBron and AD just makes a ton of sense for him. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to be optimistic again after what happened the last time I expressed that emotion on this show, but I feel very good about where the Lakers are heading, and maybe I shouldn't, considering like their best player is being recruited to the Dallas Mavericks. But hey, I like the direction of this team.
I do too. It is interesting. You just withstood the greatest jinx of all jinxes, right? In that I didn't mention you by name, but I did make it. I did heavily imply yesterday you were coming on the show. And the jinx that you were like the line in the sand that you were drawing is your own optimism.
Yeah.
Like that's where you were stopping. You were I will not go beyond right here. And I understand. I from experience I totally get it. Would you go so far as to say next season that the Lakers could win a championship? Like you were
Totally.
You were unrelenting this year until you relented, unfortunately. Next year, you
I think
like
I
all
stopped
things,
at like a 20%, which honestly, with 4 teams left, is not even that much.
it's less than just like normal.
Coin flip, yeah.
It's not even a 25% chance with all. Yeah, it was funny to see that over the course of the thing, and it's like I kept needling you, like not on the show, but like just
Right.
Hey, can I get you to 5%? Can I get you to, which 5% of something happening is just like nothing, but
Literally
yeah.
nothing. That's like statistically insignificant when people run studies.
Yeah, still double of what Connor Roy would
my God.
got in succession. But yeah, I think I'm with you, and realistically speaking, right? So the offseason that I just kind of have penciled in as of right now is, especially now that we're getting reports that the Lakers are intent upon using that number 17 pick. Look, their draft history would indicate that that's probably a good decision. Financially, it's also a really good decision. As they are getting, as Jake said on the show, marching orders to stay below that second apron. So realistically speaking, you bring back Reaves, you bring back Rui, LeBron, AD. I think Max Christie is somebody who I'm like I wouldn't go so far as to just add him to the rotation right now, but I could see him being 12th guy, 11th guy, next year.
Totally.
And he's at an important position, right? Like they were really bad this year, I think, at just like non-ball handling shooting guard when it really mattered, right? Malik Beasley was just like not playable. He was a $16 million player, and he was just
Wasn't the non-ball handling shooting guard like Patrick Beverly to start the
yeah,
season?
right. Like it was just like those guys just tended to drive me insane. And of those players, I would go so far as to say is like Max probably was one of the better ones, like the least
I'm very
frustrating
excited
ones.
for Summer League Mac Christie.
Me
Very
too.
excited.
Me too. Plus the first rounder, plus 47, plus whatever second rounder they buy
Right.
that they usually do in a draft like this one. So yeah, I think so you got those, 4 or 5 guys, right? Rui, Reaves, LeBron, AD, Max. My guess, semi-educated guess, is that D'Angelo Russell is back next year, that they don't sign and trade him and hard cap themselves. So And look, for like an 82 game type player or
Good
somebody who
player.
gets you to the trade deadline, like yeah, I think that's perfectly fine.
I
And
think he was even good, like not good, but he like had moments in the playoffs too before the conference finals.
yeah, right.
I mean, I think about Kuzma, like even in his playoff run, he was only good through the first two rounds. He was very bad against Denver and Miami. So
Yeah. So yeah, I think there is the makings of a team that, if I had to handicap it going into next year, I think Denver's going to be the far and away favorite. I would imagine, almost regardless of how this series plays out. And then from there, like maybe Milwaukee, but I think Milwaukee's heading into a weird offseason. They're gonna have a brand new coach, a rookie
mhm.
coach, by the way. And yeah, I can't think of very many teams beyond Denver who I think is going to win a championship this year that I would just say definitively is better than the Lakers next year if the Lakers have like even an okay offseason. And I'm with you. I think I have some optimism about this team. I'm not going to say it too loud because Thunder literally just cracked overhead, but it is still something that like I do feel like fans can be excited about how the season goes. And all that said, and here's where like that thunder cracking, I should have that sounder on my board here or whatever. But the kind of main factor in maintaining this organizational momentum is getting LeBron to buy into a team with two stars and a bunch of really good role players.
Mhm.
Because I think that is the largest question facing this offseason. Yeah, Dave McMenamin made sure to say that this was just from Kyrie's camp, and this was not at all LeBron. Jovan Buha made sure to throw a whole bunch of water on a colleague story,
Thank
which
goodness.
was kind of interesting. Yeah, and Tim McMahon also from no
Tim
Tim
Cato.
Cato, yeah.
Mhm.
Also, heavily implied that was a Kyrie thing. Mark Stein saying that was a Kyrie thing. So to a certain extent, like a lot of this is out of LeBron's hands. He can't impact what other players leak about him. But also, we know he wants to play with Kyrie. I just spoke to
Mhm.
somebody, close to the Lakers who says, yeah, we know he wants to play with Kyrie, but we know he also knows it's not practical. It's not really possible.
Right.
And so still though, the fact that like he's still that kind of interested in Kyrie or another star, even as this CBA basically does not permit three-star teams from to exist.
Exactly.
I I guess for me the biggest factor going into next season is how bought in LeBron will be with a team like that, which is a weird thing to hope for given that kind of team won him his most recent championship. When do you think, like, what do you think it would take for him to acknowledge that this is probably the best path forward?
I thought winning a title would be enough for him to acknowledge that it was the best path forward.
Yeah,
Because to
I
be
would say
fair,
so.
his
It's
first
kind of
three
like
titles
Avery
from
like
three-star
she
teams.
Avery does this thing. Young children do this thing.
Sure.
Where so we're at a park a month ago, right?
Mhm.
And just having a blast. They have this swing set. She runs right across this swing set, and some girl levels her, takes her out, absolutely obliterates her.
Okay.
And she comes back. She's screaming. She has like a Nike imprint on her cheek. you know, and I told her like, hey, that's why you can't run in front of the swings there, right? You see what the kids are doing there. They are going to hit you really hard if you run in front of the swing set there. Okay, Daddy, can I go play now? Okay, yeah, go ahead and play. 5 minutes later, she's running right by the swing set. It's like, how did you not learn? And like, I'm not saying this to compare LeBron to my 3-year-old daughter. None of us, like, there are certain things that we will just never learn. We all have our blind spots, and you hope that over time you hone those blind spots so there's only like a really small margin of your vision that is blocked consistently. But this seems to be his thing. This seems to be that girl swinging by with the Kyrie logoed shoes. It keeps like kicking him in the face.
Yeah, I don't really get it because I mean, like I was saying, Miami 3 stars, obviously Cleveland 3 stars. He didn't even try with two in Cleveland, made them trade away Wiggins, before he even got there, which probably the
Yeah.
right move. I mean, Kevin Love's still, doing good things in the finals to this day,
Yeah.
but um, I really did believe that after that proof of concept in 2020, and the fact that I I still look back at that 2020-21 Lakers season so fondly, even though everybody from the organization seems to think that it was like a colossal failure, and I
Yeah.
don't understand. Like, this is the way that good teams are built. Like, you need to have a lot of depth. You need to have multiple options that you can throw out in a playoff series. You need to have some diversity in your matchups and rotations, and
Yeah.
it's just not possible when you have 3 stars, especially because I don't trust Kyrie Irving. And
Yeah.
it's like, the Lakers obviously tried a different third star, and that just didn't work. I mean, he wasn't even an all-star when he was in LA, which is just wild to think about. Like, the third star was not even an all-star. But
Yeah.
I I would hope that LeBron has enough good feelings from this run over the last 3 months that he's like, yeah, I would go to war with these guys again,
Yeah.
But maybe he's also just like, yeah, every time I throw Jared Vanderbilt the ball, he has to, take a rhythm dribble to go back up. And like, I want a guy who doesn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
this is nothing personal against Vando, obviously. Clearly, this
Well,
is a thing
like
that sticks
the
out to me.
fact that
But
the season ends and he's immediately talking about retirement doesn't give me the warmest fuzzy feelings that like
I
he's
mean, he
bought
is
into this
38,
concept.
right? He
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
just play a long stretch of basketball on an injury that should have required surgery. I think he was exhausted. I think he's looking at a guy across the way in Nikola Jokic who's not getting any worse, who was already better than him in this series, which is like a crazy thing to say. And for all of LeBron's, like, I think he does a nice job of like showing respect to the younger generation. I think he's always been a little less charitable towards foreign players. And so to have Nikola Jokic, do that to him was probably pretty annoying.
Yeah.
I just think in the heat of the moment for him to bring up retirement is also like the only child energy, right? Like LeBron
Yeah.
has a way of making the story about him. Like even after they got swept in the finals by the Warriors in 2018, he brings up the broken hand, right? And like, yeah, I punched a wall or something after game one, and I've been playing on this for the last 3 games. And it's just LeBron, like they just won back-to-back titles. We can let them have their moment for a day,
Yeah.
but it's no, like
No.
look at LeBron's shooting numbers with a broken hand over the last 3 games. So
He's Kendall Roy, right? He's got to control the narrative, like
gotta
at all
control.
costs.
Everybody controls the narrative.
Yeah, the best explanation for the retirement talk after the season. I don't know if he said it on the show, but Harrison was just like, "Oh yeah, if he talks about retirement, nobody's talking about the fact he just got swept.
Right.
Like no, if he taught like, and by the way, that's how it played out.
Yeah.
Nobody. We have seemed to move on from the fact that the Lakers got swept and LeBron didn't win a game in that series, despite playing 48 minutes in Game 4. Everybody immediately moved to, well, what does it mean cap wise if he retires, and could he actually mean it? He never meant it.
Yeah.
But
Nobody's
yeah,
talking about Aaron Gordon just like, taking his cookies at the end of the game.
yeah, yeah,
It's really good media manipulation. Like LeBron is very good at this. And
yeah,
that's why I'm not terribly concerned about the retirement. I do believe that he has enough sense to know that this is a team that proved it could be something, provided like there's some internal improvement, or he and AD are healthier, or Darvin Ham obviously has to have his own internal improvement. Like I think
yeah,
you've mentioned that there are clearly instances where you can see how another coach would have handled the situation that Darvin didn't. And
hmm
it's not to like denigrate Darvin. He's a rookie coach, and to get this team to the conference finals from where they started, I think is like a massive achievement. But
yeah,
everybody just has to be better. And like, does he think that there's enough to get better on this team? I don't know. But I also don't think
yeah.
that the third star is feasible. Just like,
No.
I almost wonder if LeBron and Kyrie, like if that's something particular, like would he be okay with a third star if it was, I don't know,
Oh,
Bradley Beal or something? Like, is it
yeah,
specifically Kyrie, or is it just that he happens to be the one that's available, or
yeah.
even like remotely available?
I've kind of wondered with Kyrie if it's like the Shaq Kobe thing where they have tried while Kobe was still alive, right? They tried so many times to rewrite history and go back and like, yeah, there were some times where they were realistic about it and they said like, yeah, we screwed up, we were immature, and we cost ourselves championships, plural. But there were also times where they were like where they look back at on that time with rosier colored glasses than you maybe should have, given that you guys did break up.
Right.
And I kind of wonder if that's kind of going on here with Kyrie and LeBron, that like Kyrie leaves, demands a trade out while Cleveland is still very much competitive. And and I kind of wonder if both of those guys are kind of looking back on it like, you remember the good times. You don't necessarily remember what got you to a point where you demanded a trade out in the first place, or you forget the fact that the guy demanded a trade,
Right.
and you just look back on the fact that you guys won together, as you have struggled to win after the most recent championship. So yeah, I do. That's a really fun theory that I would love to kind of pick people who are closer to LeBron's brains on, if this is a Kyrie specific thing, or if it's just like any star, and how does he define a star? Because would it shock you? Like we're gonna get Austin Reaves is gonna get way too many All-Star votes, right? This year, it's gonna happen.
He got way too many All-Star votes last year.
Yeah, right. But if he's averaging 17 a game, right? 17 and like 5 or 6 assists. Yeah. If he's like a legitimate good starting either point guard or shooting guard, like it's not completely out of the realm that he becomes an all-star, right? Can
it is
he
completely out of the realm. The coaches are not going to let this happen.
That's fair.
If it were just fan voting, still,
Yeah,
this guy would be an all-star starter next to Steph Curry next year.
Do you think he can get
that
more
would
votes
be your
than
West
Steph?
backcourt.
Well, I wonder which backcourt. I guess Luka is still considered like a backcourt player, right? Like he gets guard votes. Yeah, so I don't think he's going to get more votes.
Fungibility with All NBA, like he gets moved as a forward there sometimes.
It's so weird, yeah.
And like I think Ja's popularity is obviously going down. So if it was just fan vote,
hope so. I don't even know if Ja's going to play next year. It's not a good sign.
We're still waiting for the discipline to come out. That's right.
Yeah, it's not a good sign that like the commissioner's like, this is going to be such a news-making punishment that I don't want to drop it in the middle of the finals.
Which in and of itself is news, Adam.
Yeah.
Why would you just not say the investigation is ongoing? Like that's easy. That's an easy line.
Last thing before we move on to Spark stuff. We talked about Austin, and actually this was a perfect segue if I didn't mention that it was a segue. I see him as a point guard next year. I see him as like a LeBron point guard. Now, I don't think he would be like a good, primary ball handler on a really good team. I think he's a little too slow with that. His handle needs to get quite a bit tighter for that to happen. Great instincts, all of that stuff. And I also have questions about him defensively in that spot. But still, on a LeBron team as the secondary ball handler, and at times maybe primary with LeBron as a secondary ball handler who like really draws a lot of attention to himself. That is the path forward I think makes the most sense for the Lakers. It's a lot easier to find a shooting guard that fits into that team concept than a point guard that fits into what the Lakers need from a point guard with Austin as a shooting guard. You're a lot higher on the Dennis Schroeder experience than I have been from basically day one.
It's so weird because I was so anti Dennis Schroeder trade, whereas you thought it was a great deal, and we completely flipped.
All right. In fairness, as I keep coming back to, I was really excited about the Dennis Schroeder acquisition if he was the sixth man.
So
I thought
Caruso, to trade a
first-round
pick to get a sixth man.
The Lakers would have been better with him in that role. I
don't think so. I think they were perfectly fine with him in that role. That was not the problem with that season.
But yeah, let's say the Lakers utilize some of their exception money to bring back Schroeder, and he's the starting point guard going into next year, which I think is a perfectly viable route that I think they wind up taking, because I don't think he's going to be like a $10 million player or anything like that.
Correct. Yeah.
I would rather see what I think there are other avenues to take there, but what would you think about that path there?
So let's start at the beginning. I think I agree with you in that I would rather have a shooter, like a more prototypical two guard next to Austin and LeBron.
Like if Beasley was good.
Perimeter spot. Yeah, like if Beasley was good. Exactly. I think I would rather have a shooter in that spot than trying to fit a point guard, because I don't think you need additional ball handling beyond Austin and LeBron. I think you're fine with just those two. I don't know who that shooting guard is, to be perfectly honest, because I don't know I don't think it's Malik Beasley. Let's be clear. I don't think it's Malik. I think you can bring him off the bench. That's fine. Is it Lonnie Walker? I don't know. For most of
Yeah.
the regular season, I was very unimpressed with Lonnie Walker's defense. I thought that was the
Yeah.
reason why he had fallen out of the rotation, was because he
Hmm.
was not adding anything on that end of the floor. And yes, his offensive role moved around quite a bit, and that probably wasn't fair to him. But also, like, you got to give it on the other end, and I don't think he was in the
In
playoffs.
fairness, he
I
was
thought
seen as a small forward. He was guarding wings.
he was also like playing next to Pat, and so he could have been the 2 and Pat would be the 3, and like he
Yeah.
wasn't giving anything there.
Mhm.
I thought he was fine in the playoffs defensively,
Mhm.
and if Lonnie is the guy you want to put next to Austin and LeBron, if he wants to come back, like I think the Lakers could probably offer him about $7 million next year for his next contract, which
Yeah.
maybe he's outplayed. I don't know that he has if he likes it here. Like that seems like a perfectly viable perimeter starting crew, Austin, Lonnie, LeBron, just a guy who gives some spacing, a little bit more athleticism, because LeBron and AD are declining in that area.
Yeah.
LeBron has like 8 like full court reps that he can bust out during the course of a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would prefer some spacing, especially because Anthony Davis's jump shot is just not coming back.
Mhm.
And LeBron just, it's so much harder for him to get into the paint at this stage in his career that I would just be on board with getting as much spacing around them as possible.
Yeah.
And that's not Dennis Schroeder. Like I like
Yeah.
Dennis Schroeder as a change of pace guy when you need to, really get into the point of attack defensively. Like if for some reason just Austin doesn't have it that day and you need more ball handling, like that's a great thing to bring it off the bench. I just don't want to start with that. And like D'Lo theoretically is a shooting guard because he's a very good shooter, but he's just so inconsistent. And
Yeah.
then, like I said, taking all that off the
And
table
terrible
defensively.
defensively.
Right.
Like,
Which I thought he had a decent series again defensively against Golden State. I was very
Yeah.
impressed with how he acquitted himself, and then it just all fell apart against Denver.
yeah.
So I would prefer a shooting guard in that role. Like whether you want to call LeBron the point guard, whether you want to call Austin the point guard, I don't particularly care. It's just like, the Avery Bradley, Danny Green, LeBron James combination, right? You have
Right.
just enough ball handling, but LeBron is basically the point guard. And then even if you throw in KCP in place of Avery Bradley, right? Like those are not point guards. They're just guys who space the floor around LeBron. I think that's the model.
Yeah.
I just don't know who that guy is in free agency and like how the Lakers can get him, because like you said, they're going to have very minimal exception money to play with. And I think Dennis is first in line to get that. Like they seem to really like Dennis Schroeder. I understand why they like Dennis Schroeder. Like the numbers with Dennis are pretty good. And I thought he bought in very well. And maybe he was the Lakers' 5th best player in the postseason. Like, is that right?
Somebody has to be.
Yeah. Maybe even 4th, because like, I don't know. Rui's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I'd say 5th at best, right? Because you had
I think
LeBron
5th
and AD
is like
and then
his
Rui and
floor, honestly. Like, I don't know who would have been better than him as the 5th guy. But yeah.
Mhm.
So like that's a good player to bring back, right? Like you're who like started for you in your best lineups in the postseason. Like that's a guy you'd want to pay attention to. But I would hope that the Lakers don't go into the offseason with the plan of, let's start Dennis Schroeder, because you just need the shooting and nobody guards him.
Well, that's the big one. The Lakers, I thought when they struggled down the stretches against Denver, it was because you had Schroeder on the ball, because if he wasn't on the ball, the defense just didn't care about him at all. And if you had Schroeder on the ball, he was the 3rd best creator on the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
LeBron is a better creator, and Reaves is a better creator, especially in the pick and roll. And when Schroeder had the ball, those guys didn't. And I thought their offense just kind of got stuck in the mud, which allowed Denver to get out in transition and snowballed from there. But I just think, and I also think, not just in terms of next season, but if like Rui and Reaves are like the start of the next chapter after LeBron and AD, I think you have to optimize Rui, or you have to optimize Reaves, right? Like you have to do it. Yeah. But like mostly because I think like Rui is pretty interchangeable, I think, right? Like we know exactly what he's going to be. He's a bruising 3, probably best as a 4. And like, I don't think he's going to shoot the way that he did in the playoffs next year. That was insane. But like, we kind of know where to put him. But I think there is some legitimate discussion about Reaves. Is he a point guard? Is he a ball handling shooting guard? Is he is he like you have there's like two paths that you can take. You can either be considered a combo guard, where it's actually a good thing that you can play either of those positions, or you can be like a tweener, where you're the worst parts of both of those positions, right? And I think with Reaves, the Lakers really have to figure out like what path do they see for this guy here moving forward. And the good news for them is like they have 4 years to be able to figure that out. Like we know what contract he's going to have, unless he surprises everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that would be it. No matter what, they're going to have him for 4 years, I think, unless he like really surprises everybody and gambles on himself again and wants to hit free agency, like actual free agency next year. In which case, then you really, I don't think, can start somebody like Schroeder next to him, right? Because then if he doesn't have the ball in his hands, and then you're making a decision on him where it could be like a 4-year, $90 million decision on a guy like that next year, when you don't know which position he necessarily plays, like that's where you really start to freak yourself out. But yeah, that like the two main conversations I think that I keep having internally about this upcoming offseason is, will LeBron buy into this team dynamic, right? 2 stars and a bunch of really good role players. And where are you going to play Austin? And how are you going to maximize Austin? And I think everything kind of falls into place once you answer those 2 questions. So we'll see.
Are there any free agent shooting guards that you have in mind who would like fit that role next to him? Because otherwise, I think it's just D'Lo.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, if Beasley is okay, like he makes sense, you know.
So
like
you would
if
bench D'Lo for Beasley.
well, I think one of those 2 guys. I guess if I'm the Lakers, the most conservative path forward here would be bringing both of those guys back and finding out one way or another with both of those guys, and then addressing it at the deadline if you have to, or after December, whenever you can finally when you can trade D'Lo.
Right.
That I think is probably the most like practical path forward here in terms of like shooting guards that like if the Lakers could find a way to get Bruce Brown, like he would be perfect. Like that'd be great. He is a free agent,
exception
right?
money. Yeah, he's a player
So-
option, so he can come off. Yeah,
Oh, there's no way he's opting
I don't think
in.
he's re-upping. Yeah, but then
Yeah.
you can only sign with the Lakers for about the same amount of money that Denver could give you. So it's
Yeah.
really just.
Well, I wonder
why
like
you want
if you did like you do the sign and trade. Like if you're gonna do a sign and trade, like I would. The only player I'm just against signing and trading for is Kyrie, right? But even there, like if you sign
I
and
still
trade,
think
now
just
you're hard
signing
capping
and trading
yourself.
is really hard. Yeah, to
Yeah.
maneuver with all the money
mean,
that you're going to have to give to Rui and Austin. Yeah.
Yeah, the CBA, like it's still kind of like trickling out, but every time a new aspect of like the basketball side of things trickles out, I'm like, what?
I really hope the players enjoy their limited ownership stakes,
Yeah.
into these teams, because that is the only win I can see that they've gotten.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. It has been bananas. All right, awkward segue here to Sparks talk.
I mean,
And
ownership stakes, they could also invest in WNBA teams. That's the segue.
honestly, pretty good investment.
Yeah.
Like if like so like people always think of like the LeBrons of the world, right? Where like he has the opportunity to be a primary owner, right? Of an NBA team whenever they expand to Vegas or Seattle or wherever. But like if you've made like $100 million in your career and you're looking for a way to like stay attached and take advantage of this trust fund that it seems like it's a trust fund.
Yeah, I don't really understand it, but it's.
I would say that the WNBA is actually like a really good opportunity for players who haven't made like NBA ownership money. The W, like it's one of the points that I think it's the smartest point that keeps getting made, whether it's from you or Schindler or Nikias or anybody covering the W, is that like every time people inject money into the WNBA, you see it come back, right? That was the thing that I used to tell Harrison is like, we used to sit up late at night and we'd be talking about like paths forward in our careers. And I would just say like every time people invest in Lakers coverage or content, it produces money.
Yeah.
And like, just keep keep
ROI
spamming that
is
button.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not everybody sees it that way. But yeah, for
You and
like
I
the
are perfect examples of that.
exactly. But like the W though, like has that track record. It has that like and not just the WNBA, but like women's basketball in general, right? The college championship was one of the highest rated TV events of the year. So yeah, like for if we're talking about the one win that the players got in the negotiations,
It's the
that
only one
the
I can think of. I haven't like poured through the CBA, obviously,
yeah,
but it's very strange to me.
I'm still waiting to because um so far it hasn't been officially like released. There's it's just like morsels that come out, and every time there's a
When
new
the
morsel, I'm like,
agreement came into place, I assumed, oh, it's going to go into place for the 24-25 season. And it's just like, no, we have to make these decisions for the upcoming off season that is in less than a month. And
yeah.
yeah, here we are.
But yeah, the W though, and the season that the Sparks are having so far, what were expectations set at, and how likely are they to meet, exceed, or fall short of those expectations? I guess they're likely to do one of those three things, but what's the likeliest?
Correct. One of those things will happen. So as you mentioned earlier, the last time you and I spoke about the WNBA was right after Derek Fisher was fired, and truly anyone who would have stepped into the head coach or GM role after Derek Fisher would have been a dramatic improvement. Like you or I could have done it, and I think it would have just been a 10x, growth for the Sparks. So that's number one. Just the enormous weight that has been lifted away from the Sparks is just like cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Then you bring in the fact that like you got a coach who is former coach of the year, just took his team to the finals last year, one of the premier minds in the WNBA. That he wanted to come to LA is a big deal. I sort of came into this season thinking that the Sparks would be best suited tanking because there are some really great college classes coming out in 24 and 25, and you need that next big generational player. Like teams in the WNBA do not win a title without a generational player. Like it's the same in the NBA, right? Like you need the player.
Yeah, basketball is a pretty simple sport when you break it down.
There's only 5 players on the court. You need a really good one. You need one really good one. And, the Sparks have been led by Neko Gumake for the last 3 years or so. And she is, 33 years old. So it's 33 next month, I should say. But she's just not going to be that player for another championship team. So I was of the belief that they needed to tank. And because the WNBA lottery odds factor in 2 years worth of records, like they were already in good shape because they had a terrible record last year. So it'd be really easy to get a high pick in 24. But for those of, who familiar with college sports with the extra COVID year, it doesn't seem like most of the best players are going to be declaring themselves for this draft. Like Caitlin Clark, I don't expect to declare for this draft, even though she could. So
yeah. Well, plus with NIL money, like you can make a real case that they're better paid in college than they would.
Not all the sponsorships have to stay at Iowa, right? Like they could come with her.
Yeah.
Boston number 1 pick in this year's draft still has a lot of the deals that she did at South Carolina. But regardless, I just think, playing at Iowa, wanting to win a national title is probably a bigger deal for her than starting her pro career a year earlier. Anyway, so I think like positioning for the 25 draft makes more sense. And, the Sparks are kind of in a situation where there's like a top tier of the league that's really good. And they're not in that top tier, but they're also not as bad as some of the other teams. And so it's strange to figure out like how good they actually are because they've played 5 games. They will have played 6 by the time the show airs. And 2 of them are against Las Vegas Aces, which they lost both of them. And that's fine. They were supposed to lose to the Aces. But then the remaining 4 against Seattle and Phoenix, all teams that I project to miss the playoffs. So even if they win those other 4 games, it's like, great, you did what you were supposed to do. But I don't actually know how good that makes the Sparks if they're just taking care of business so far. But then again, taking care of business is just not something that happened in the Derek Fisher era. So there's, a real nice aura of competence with the Kurt Miller administration in Los Angeles. Like NECA seems so much happier. They're actually playing shooters. I know that's the thing we talk about a lot with the Lakers. Like they have spacers on the floor at all times. They're running plays to get those shooters open. Like Lexi Brown is having the best season of her career. Carly Samuelson, also having a really nice season. She has like a true shooting percentage of 81% at the time of this recording, which like
nuts.
Feels like a fake number, honestly.
Yeah,
but she takes a lot of shots too. Like she's playing 25 minutes a game. This is not like, I've only taken 3 shots all season. So yeah, it's been really fun to watch them play. Like they have an offense again. The vibes are just so much happier. I am like interested in going to their practices and games again. Like it's really fun having
Yeah.
the Sparks in this position of like, oh, we're a real WNBA franchise again, as opposed to just letting this horrible, horrible executive tank us for 4 years. So yeah, that's where I stand with the Sparks.
Is, you know, because I have to rethink or look back on it or whatever, but um, we had talked about the Derek Fisher firing, and then there was all the Liz Cambage stuff that went down there
Oh,
too.
that's when we recorded, the day that Liz left,
I
not when
think that
Fisher
was
got fired. Yeah.
and like her absence, like there are just some players, Kyrie, who like just you know, what was the phrase that was used on Russ? The vampire, right? It
Yeah.
just they suck the air out of the room. And so you combine the departure of Cambage and you combine the departure of Fisher, and like you're talking about right now, it just the conversations and like, you know, while the NBA is going on and while I'm getting ready for draft stuff and stuff, I mostly like pay attention to the WNBA by way of like people who cover it coming across my timeline. But I remember when I would see those tweets and stories about the Sparks, it was a lot of like, because in general, women's basketball coverage is so much more like positive and polite than
Yeah, it's definitely more
um,
polite, I would say. Yeah.
than I noticed with the NBA. And even still, like even as it's that kind of polite, people were just like, God, this is a mess. You know? So like it stood out that much more that there was that much louder the coverage of the Sparks. And now though, like I do see Edwin and you and the people who are covering this Sparks team just seem to be like, hey, we don't know if this is necessarily the direction they should go, but it's good to know that this is a direction that they're capable of. It's nice to
Mhm.
see that they're a capable organization, and like that's kind of that tends to be the very important first step, right? That's the step that the Knicks just have never been able to take. Is
Right.
that like it's like, hey, they seem to be maybe figuring it out, and they're like, oh no, wait, the very next year they are
And
not.
yeah,
And I guess
welcome
my
to the
question
den.
here is like, yeah, right. Like my question here is like, does this feel sustainable? Like the momentum, the forward momentum that they seem to have here, does that feel sustainable?
I think so. We're Kurt Miller. So his first year in LA, he was an assistant coach in LA back in 2015, and then spent 7 years as a head coach in Connecticut. And
Hmm.
they made the finals twice there. They made the conference final. I shouldn't say conference finals. They made the WNBA semifinals his last 4 years.
Hmm.
So just a sustained track record of success there. Their general manager has been out of the league for a little bit, but she helmed like a very successful period in Seattle when she was there. So there's a lot of good equity built up around the league with those two individuals. And the fact that they came off of the two absolutely shit show years they just did and still reeled in like the third best free agent this offseason
Yeah.
suggests that there is, an appetite for players to want to play in LA. Like that still exists in the WNBA because there's a huge difference between what the LA Sparks are marketing and like what the Dallas Wings or the Indiana Fever are marketing. It's just
Hmm.
night and day in the WNBA, even a bigger delta, I would say, than like what you get in NBA circles. I mean, I maybe guess not, but like LA means something in the
Yeah.
WNBA. And I do think that any sort of positive momentum will like be immediately rewarded. So if they make the playoffs this year, then you have a good selling pitch to like, I don't know, Jewel Lloyd or like Skylar Diggins Smith when they hit the market this offseason. And there is a path to, contention that way rather than let's tank for 2 years so we can get Caitlin Clark, because 2 years is a very long time after you've already missed the playoffs for 2 years.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
just, you can't be that bad for that long and expect people to stay with you, you know?
Hmm.
So I do think that like there is the way that the Sparks are being viewed right now is dramatically different than what it was
It
8
matters.
months ago. And I think that as long as Kurt Miller's around, like it's so weird to watch them play. Like, so they had this game against Phoenix last weekend, and it's the kind of game, literally the game Derek Fisher was fired for losing last year, was a game against Phoenix where
Yeah.
I think he sat Cambage for the last 7 minutes, and there was just no real plan at the end of games. There's no ATOs or execution or anything that you could point to. Like, this is what the Sparks are going to do when things get tough. And
Yeah.
you're watching the end of this Sparks Phoenix game last Friday, and it's like, okay, let's put the ball in Lexi Brown's hands. We're going to run her off 2 screens. Either they sell out to, take away the 3-pointer, or she can drive to the hoop. And they sell out to take away the 3-pointer, drive to the hoop, ties the game. And it's like, yes, this is how you run an offense. This is just how teams are supposed to do
Yeah.
things, when they're coached well. And it's so
I
weird
I just
to see that.
I'd like thinking back of what it was like to have a coach who called timeouts when they needed to be called. I miss that. That was fun.
It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
And I do believe that just having this, I keep saying competence over and over again, but it was just so absent over the last 4 years, just at every level of the organization, like whether it was where they were practicing or, the types of practice players they were bringing in or the sets they were running, or like the fact that it was one person doing both roles and not even knowing like how the league's salary cap worked while he was doing it. Sorry. It's just so nice to have
Yeah.
like a real direction. And like, again, I didn't exactly agree with the direction going in. I thought they should have tanked. But I can understand wanting to just be a 6 seed and say, like, hey, look how far we've come already in 1 year. Free agent X, if you want to come in, we're just going to be building and building further and further, when you come next year. So I get the
Yeah.
idea.
Mhm.
And, it's a lot more fun to be a part of that than a team that's losing a lot of games again.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the losing, right? Like I did the show with Kirk and with Josh last night, talking about the Mavericks, right? And their thought as it pertains to LeBron is like, yeah, LeBron could come in, he could be old, and Kyrie could get hurt, and Luka could be frustrated or whatever, and the Mavericks might suck all the same. But it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but that's a more entertaining sucking, right? Like that's
Yeah.
like you look back on this last season with Russ, we're heading into it, you're like, I know how this is gonna go. This is going to suck. And then it did, and it's just like I didn't care what the Lakers got back for him. Just make it entertaining. Like make me want to tune into these games. And that's what it kind of sounds like here, with the Sparks moving forward. Last thing before I let you go on not necessarily just the Sparks, but the WNBA in general. I really noticed this year a super pervasive storyline of like players who should be good enough to be in the WNBA being let go. And the the W is growing. We've talked about it here a few times, and it's growing in a way that I think it shouldn't take a bunch of arm twisting to get further investment into the league. They have to expand at some point, right? Like there's the caliber of player who I kept seeing, and look, I don't know nearly enough about the league to say any of this definitively, but
Mhm.
like the reactions to players being let go was so unified, right? Like, how is this player not on a team? And as the sport grows, it's only going to get more competitive there. So is expansion on the horizon at all? I know. It's you get the question a lot. I'm sorry, but it's
No,
just
no, no,
like
no.
it's such an obvious fix. It's just like it's just it's screaming at everybody right in the face.
So the commissioner has just been horrifically unclear about expansion. During the 2022 season, in the middle of the year, she said, we hope to have a list of, you know, 10 expansion cities and then whittle it down to 2 by the end of the year, like December 2022. And then we can, start the process to bring those 2 teams in 24 or 25. And then that 2 never came. And then it was like, oh, well, we're looking at a list of 100 cities again. And now it's back down to a list of 20 cities. And like maybe in 2 or 3 years they'll come. And even in the interim, we can't even think about roster expansion, which roster expansion would actually be a really important thing because
Mm-hmm.
right now it's capped at 12 because of the hard cap in the WNBA. A lot of teams can only carry 11.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, literally, you lose 1 player, you lose 2 players, and you're in a situation where can't even run fives in
Yeah,
practice, right?
Chris
Like
Kaman is lying on
that's tough,
benches.
right? And considering like a lot of these players are playing year round, they're nursing a lot of long-term injuries just over the course of the year, and it's hard to keep them healthy over the course of a full WNBA season. And when you only have 12, like your rotation is 9 or 10 players, you're not really keeping any spots for those developmental players, right? There's no G League, there's no developmental league. If you want to hold on to a young player and just help her grow in your system, there's no roster spot to do that unless you're willing to just not have a rotation player, for that particular
Yeah.
season. So the commissioner has pretty much axed any thought of roster expansion, is being deliberately obtuse about league expansion. And as the collegiate game gets more and more popular, people just know these players more, right? Like
Yeah.
this situation of players getting cut at the start of training camp was always happening. It's just that we weren't as familiar with the collegiate players. A lot of the WNBA players were coming over late from overseas play, so they weren't even in training camp. So the collegians got to stick around a little bit longer, and they
Yeah.
weren't getting cut before the start of the season. Uh, and so it's just more eyes on the league means more attention to what is happening. More eyes on college basketball means people are more attached to the college players, and it's like we had this dramatically interesting Final Four. Every single player who was drafted out of a Final Four team, like other than South Carolina, is not in the league right now,
That's
which is
unreal.
wild, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like everybody looked back on the Magic Bird national championship, right?
Mhm.
And how obviously Magic and Bird were
Right.
like the impetus for growth in the NBA or whatever, but they were certainly like, imagine if there were good role players there who people also cared about. They were just like,
Mhm.
yeah, no, they aren't in the league. I
Yeah.
hope you enjoyed watching them play, but no, they aren't in the
Yeah,
league.
like the second best players on Iowa and LSU, both drafted, both out of the league. Other player on LSU drafted, not in the league. A couple players on Virginia Tech who lost to LSU in the Final Four, drafted, not in the league. So you can't convert that momentum from college into WNBA if you're saying like, hey, remember all these games you love to watch? Yeah, we're not going to give you any of those players anymore.
Yeah.
And not enough players are retiring to support an influx of more players. It's just not happening. Like the WNBA had maybe 3 retirements last year, and then you have a draft of 36 players. Like, where are those spots supposed to come from?
How frustrating is it to like cover a sport that is so clearly growing but is held back by the only place that these players get drafted to in the states? Like it's that's got to be maddening. Like that's not a problem anybody covering Major League Baseball or
Mhm.
the NBA or the NFL has to think about. Maybe MLS people who like have covered the sport for long enough
But
will
even
look
then,
back on
yeah.
those times or whatever. But like this is so uniquely a
A
a,
WNBA
a
problem.
well, and a women's sports problem, right? Like it's so uniquely it's so like
Well, I think of it more as a WNBA problem because the NWSL is a league that is 11 years old. So the WNBA is entering its 27th or in its 27th season.
mhm.
Got quite a few years on the NWSL. NWSL already has 12 teams. They're bringing in
Un-
another
so,
two next year. They're bringing in
yeah.
another one after
So
that.
what's going on then? Like what I
The soccer leagues, like MLS is the same age as the WNBA. They understand that a great way to bring in more money into their league, expansion fees. And
yeah.
yet, for some reason, the WNBA is, I don't know if it's the commissioner or if it's somebody else, like the old ownership in the league, they're so concerned about the exclusivity of, oh, we have the very best players in the world. And it's like, yeah, you have the best players in the world. They're not going anywhere, but you could make the
Yeah.
league so much more of an attractive product and like actually let all of those players only play in your league if you
Yeah.
made it a bigger entity. And we're seeing higher valuations for teams like the Seattle Storm just opened up a round of investing that valued their team at 150 million, which is it's a nice big number. Like if you could get an
Yeah.
expansion fee for something like that, think of all the
Yeah.
things you could do for the WNBA. The Chicago Sky just had an investment round that valued their team at 85 million. And they don't have a practice facility or anything. They literally just play at DePaul. So for that, a team with no facilities whatsoever, just the organization and its players to be valued at that, it's a pretty good number considering Mark Davis just bought the Aces in 2021 for $2 million. Like to have that jump in valuation is kind of
Yeah.
mind boggling. So I think, yeah, they're just leaving money on the table. And I don't really understand why it's the case. I mean, even like setting aside the new teams, I really think just adding one more player to each team would make a dramatic difference in terms of all of
Yeah.
the college players that could say. Because when you're cutting first round picks,
That's
it just
insane.
it devalues the draft itself. It's like
Before they
why even
play
bother?
too.
Yeah.
You don't even get to see like if a
Mhm.
player isn't good enough to be in the league. It's just like, no, take our word for it. She wasn't. What?
Right, right.
Hold
And
on,
it's one
huh?
thing to say that like, oh, maybe they made a mistake in their talent evaluation or whatever. But no, it's just out of the top 24 picks, which everyone gets to take part in, 11 of them make the league. Like that's nothing. And
Yeah.
they're not even really playing. And who's to say that they're gonna make it to the end of their rookie contracts? I mean, it's so weird, and it's frustrating because college basketball is in such this wave, right? Like the last few Final Fours have been so exciting and entertaining, and they've got this great talent, and the fact that they're making money like makes it so much less icky to root for college sports again. Like I had a real problem with that back in the day, and now it's nice. Like, hey, you know, it's not just the overwhelmingly white coaches and athletic directors who are benefiting off of this labor. It's like Angel Reese gets to, you know, drive a Benz around because that's her endorsement deal. Like that's freaking awesome.
Right. Yeah.
And I just wish that, you know, all of the players who helped Angel Reese win a national championship could play in the WNBA, and none of them are.
Yeah, I would think, you know, and this is just luck that I happen to make the comparison before, but like with Magic and Bird, the NBA was a disaster. Like pre-Magic and Bird, it was just like you had, you know, finals games on tape delay, and it was just this league that just was not going where it needed to go. They come in, right, and their star and their charisma, like they did elevate the league, but it was also a league that like started to realize, oh my God, there's a lot of money to be made here. And like you just talked a second ago about, you know, Mark Davis buying in for $2 million, and now you're getting $85 million evaluations or potentially $150 million expansion fees. So clearly there is money to be made here. You just don't see it very often in this country that people just like turn down money, like industry wide. We just like, nope, we're good here. And especially not the people who should be directly invested, the commissioner, other owners. They should be directly and literally financially invested in this thing growing. And yet for some reason it just continues to stall out as we're on the precipice of what could be the Magic Bird draft coming up, right? Like, like as they're getting ready to come into the league, we're just not seeing the league prepared for them. And that feels like a potentially hugely missed opportunity.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is that there are owners who have been in the league for so long who are wary of, you know, having to contract again, because the league was as much as 16 teams in the early 2000s, and quite a few of them folded. Or they want to maintain their place in the league and don't want rich people to price them out, which like, if you don't have the money to maintain a sports team, sorry, it's not your gig.
But enough about Jeannie.
Full circle.
Well, Sabrina, it is always a blast to talk with you. I've taken up way too much of your time already. Plug whatever you need to plug. Tell people where they need to find your content. It is all really good. So tell people where to find it.
Yeah, everything I write about women's basketball is at theathletic.com. I am mostly in WNBA world right now, doing a lot of Las Vegas Aces actually and Sparks, but I consider myself like the Southwest WNBA beat writer. So
I like it.
Any teams in that area that you're interested in reading about, that's what I do. But yeah, all at The Athletic.
I would maybe rebrand to not like link yourself up with Southwest Airlines, but you
Honestly,
know what?
I'm trying because I fly them all the time. So it's deliberate.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Best of luck here on this season moving forward, and congratulations on once again being right. The Lakers will not win a championship this year.